I think we should start now. So you guys can all still see my screen. Uh, okay. So, hi, I'm Sonal Khani. I am a rising senior at John P. Stevens High School. So if you know me, pretend like you don't in the hallways, please. Um, so throughout this presentation, it's about like the muscular system. So throughout this presentation, I will utilize like a superhero analogy to explain the complex concepts related to muscle fibers in your body. So please keep in mind that this analogy is used purely for illustrative purposes and to make the information more accessible and engaging. So as we go into like this world of muscles and their components, I encourage you to think of them in the context of superheroes as can provide like a relative framework and make it easier to understand their functions and interactions. So to start off, um, how do you think your body moves? This is just a question that we can put in the chat or well, yeah, I guess. It's just a question that I wanted to keep open for discussion. So it could be general, it could be a scientific response. It doesn't. It's just a like general question just to get conversation going. So it can be like a one word response in the chat. It doesn't have to be anything too elaborate. Uh, so yeah, you guys can answer. Mm. You can put it in the chat if you'd like. That is true. Yeah, it do be muscles. Okay. Um, so to start off, muscles are like the engines of a car first. They propel your body forward. So just as like the engine in a vehicle converts fuel into energy to power the whole vehicle, muscles convert chemical energy into mechanical energy to sort of drive your movements. They contract when they also relax. They work together like a well-coordinated team, and they enable you to perform various activities from delicate tasks to like powerful feats, right? So just like superheroes, skeletal muscles are extraordinary organs that go beyond just being simple muscles. So they possess a remarkable team of components, including skeletal muscle tissue, connective tissues, and nerves and blood vessels. And together it kind of forms like a powerful alliance that you would see in like a superhero movie. So their mission is to empower our movements just as like superheroes fight for justice, right? They work hand in hand with our bones, but skeletal muscles also enable us to perform various actions like walking, jumping, to like just waiting hell out, right? But their impact doesn't stop there. So these muscular superheroes, if you must, also support our soft tissues. They maintain our posture, regulate body temperature, and they safeguard our body's like entrances and exits, like the digestive tracts. They regulate what goes into your body and what comes out of your body. If they detect a harmful chemical entering your body, then like you cough it up. So like our body's protectors, they keep everything in place. They ensure our well-being, and like skeletal muscles, they let us perform our lives at an easier pace. So, okay, let's go into the next one. So, is this a good pace that I'm going at? Like, is anyone confused, or are we good? Mm, okay. All right. I think we're good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, what are the layers of the skeletal muscle? So, to start off, um, just like so like Let's envision like your skeletal muscles as like a superhero having like layers of protection on their armor, like Iron Man or whatever. So the epimysium, it acts as like a robust shield, and it basically encompasses the entire muscle like a suit of armor. It safeguards it from harm. Within this like muscle like fortress, the perimysium divides the muscle into compartments or like separate rooms in a superhero's headquarters. So each compartment is called a fascicle. It's like a team of muscle fibers working together to accomplish tasks. So wrapping around each muscle fiber, there's another layer, which is called the endomysium. So as you've seen like the picture, the epimysium is like this reddish area which surrounds all of the muscle. I can't exactly point on this, but it's like this reddish area. Oh no, maybe I can. It's like this reddish encompasses the muscle. The perimysium is it's hard to see, but it's like this line that kind of surrounds each little compartment-like substance that has like these red dots in the middle, right? So that's the perimysium, and that kind of divides the skeletal muscle into compartments. So each compartment has like these bundled muscle fibers. So these red dots are like a bundled muscle fibers. So each red dot represents a muscle fiber, and there's a bundle of them. So it's like a fascicle. But as you can tell, like if we go more into depth within the fascicle, which this endomysium, which is like the little like nooks and crannies that you see in between the muscle fibers that kind of holds it together, the endomysium. Another way to think of it is like endo, which means inner. So it's like the innermost layer. And it surrounds each skeletal muscle fiber and it ties the adjacent like muscle fibers together. Um, so like this red little component is the muscle fiber. And so it gets tied together by the endomysium. And just like as a final thing, there's also like this secret weapon in it, which is called stem cells. So they possess incredible regenerative like abilities. They act kind of as like the muscle's repair team, if you will. They are ready to mend any damage and they keep our like muscle strong. So together, these layers they create a formidable defense system that basically counterattacks any again harmful toxin coming into our body. So I know it may seem like out of the ordinary to put like tendons and ligaments when talking about like muscles and muscle systems, but it's important that we know this, and you might already know this, but so I'm gonna try to cover this as like quickly as possible. So just like a superhero like has like its trustworthy sidekicks, muscles rely on tendons and ligaments for stability and movement. So tendons are basically strong elastic cords that attach your muscle to your bone. Ligaments, on the other hand, they're like collagen bands or they're flexible bands that basically connect bones to other bones. So tendons are like durable ropes that you would see like villain go across trying to get to a superhero. They're like they allow the muscle to pull on bones and create movement. So like the muscle is over here and the bone is over here. So the tendon is kind of like the glue that connects muscle to bone, and a ligament is the glue in a sense because it connects bone to bone. And they're just bands of collagen fibers. So ligaments, they, on the other hand, they provide stability and prevent our joints from moving too much. They are one of the prime factors to decreasing our risk of having arthritis, which is again like a joint pain. And they keep everything in proper alignment. They let us walk. They're the muscles that are responsible for us jumping, basically doing any physical movements like even hand gestures like I am. So now that we understand what a tendon and a ligament is, let's talk about the components of a muscle from like the largest to the smallest. It may look like a lot on the slideshow, but it really isn't. It's literally what we just talked about, but just in a different slide because frankly, it looks prettier. So to start off, again, the muscle itself is like a superhero's headquarters. It consists of fascicles and teams of muscle fibers. So this durable fortress, which is the epimysium, which protects and connects these fascicles, like a little compartments that you see in the picture. They ensure unity. They ensure that all these compartments kind of stay together in this little like wrap thing of a epimysium. Within each fascicle, there's called myocytes. So myocytes is just another fancy way that scientists use to say muscle fibers. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. But myocytes are like individual muscle cells, right? Like muscle fibers. And they act as like the building blocks of the muscle. So like it's like the smallest component. And they're supporting them is the perimysium, which is a strong shield that basically holds the myocytes together. So again, this is the epimysium. This is the tendon attaching muscle to bone. And then these are like your perimysium. This structure is the perimysium, but the inner components are muscle fibers or myocytes. You could say either. And so the myofibrils, which are inside the myocytes, which correlate to this little tiny part in the image. The myofibrils are cradled and connected by like the gentle embrace of the endomysium. So the smallest component we'll talk about later is the sarcomere, but it's basically like the functional unit of muscle contraction. Like if you were to list the muscles from smallest to largest, sarcomere is typically the one that you would put first as the smallest. Okay, cool. Uh, any questions, just let me know during the presentation. Okay, let's talk about the sarcolemma, right? That's different from the sarcomere because the sarcolemma, it's a remarkable membrane that basically surrounds each muscle fiber, forming again the protective fortress that you would see around a superhero's dome. It's like a reliable shield because the sarcolemma acts as kind of like a barrier. It's like a membrane, and it separates the delicate sarcoplasm, which is the membrane in your muscles, from like the outside world, from the outside activity. So the reasons why your muscles aren't spilling out is because of the sarcolemma in a sense. So by defining the boundaries of each muscle fiber, it kind of maintains its integrity and ensures efficient like internal processes. So the sarcolemma, it allows essential substances like nutrients and signaling molecules to enter while preventing unwanted substances from entering. So envision the sarcolemma again as like an impenetrable shield which guards the sarcoplasm and empowers our muscles to perform like different feats or different tasks. That's kind of what the sarcolemma is. Okay. And this is the part of the sarcolemma. This like little thin layer that you see here is the sarcolemma. So just next is like the transverse tubuli. So that's like these yellow network spider web shaped things throughout the sarcolemma. So the transverse tubuli. So when we think about the transverse tubuli, think of it as like intricate secret tunnels within the sarcolemma, which are formed by openings on its surface. So the sarcolemma again is like this. Excuse me. It's like this membrane type thing. And so in the membrane, there are little like holes like everywhere. And through those holes emerge like these little tunnels. And so basically these tunnels, they penetrate deep into like the muscle fiber. And they're kind of like a network of communication channels, like how you pick up the phone and it goes and you try to call someone and it goes straight towards them. It's like almost like that. But instead it's like a visible connection channel. So the two tubules, they basically coordinate the muscle contraction as a superhero's team works in harmony. They allow electrical impulses to travel rapidly and they ensure that simultaneously signals throughout the fiber. So when they allow these electrical impulses to travel rapidly, they're also allowing like signals throughout the fiber that basically like tell you, okay, like move your arm this way or whatever. When you touch a hot substance, when how you repel back, that's kind of what these tubules do. They're like an advanced communication network again, and they synchronize muscle activity for efficient functioning. So the primary like function of this is to just make your muscles move more efficiently and more safely at a secure pace. So by facilitating the passage of electrical impulses, T-tubules basically enable like contractions to happen, which are essential for like if you go to the gym, it's like it helps you like lift weights, cross country track people, it helps you run, and then just other tasks like walking. Okay, cool. So that's T-tubules. Again, if it's overwhelming at any point, please just let me know because I remember when learning about this in anatomy, it was like really bad. Okay. So next we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum, right? And so when we talk about the sarcoplasmic reticulum, let's think about it like it's like a hidden vault within like a superhero's lair, right? It consists of interconnected membranes, again, tightly surrounding the T-tubules. So there's membranes that are inside this blue-shaped kind of thing that seems like it's protruding outward, like it's about to burst. It's actually held tightly by the T-tubules. So that's another important factor that it keeps everything of the T-tubules is that it keeps everything intact. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum, it consists of interconnecting membranes tightly surrounding the T-tubuli. So like the blue things are the membranes which are surrounded by T-tubuli. This alliance, if you will, of the SR, which is just another like easy way of saying sarcoplasmic reticulum, the SR and the T-tubuli alliance, it forms a triad, which supports the muscle function. So if this part all the way to here, this little part where it all connects, that's like a triad. And tri meaning three, so it's like 1, 2, 3, right? So it's like if you know the prefix from Latin, it goes like one sarcoplasmic reticulum, one T-tubuli, and one sarcoplasmic reticulum equals 3 factors. So therefore, scientists thought, let's call it a triad. So, okay, the sarcoplasmic reticulum's crucial main function that it has is that it stores and regulates calcium ions. So it acts kind of like like it acts like an intracellular calcium store, if you will. It holds a high concentration of calcium ions because calcium is really important for your bones. That's why like parents would be like, oh, drink milk because it helps make your bones stronger, and it really does. So when the muscle fiber receives the signal to contract, again, the electrical signal from the T-tubuli, the SR will basically release these stored calcium ions or the stored energy that it had in it in the sarcoplasm, which again, I'll go on to later, is like the muscle's fiber interior. So the SR will basically release energy into the muscle fiber's interior to produce contraction of your muscles. So this calcium release, it then triggers the special powers, say, of a superhero, because calcium ions in the sarcoplasm, they initiate a complex series of events which lead to muscle contraction. And that just unlocks, it's like a key that unlocks like all of the contractions, everything that your muscles are responsible for. It's all because of calcium and calcium ions. So the more calcium, the more milk that you drink, the better and the stronger your bones will be. No way. Okay. Myofibrils, they're not that important because I'll go over them later, but as like a thing about myofibrils is that they're the most powerful core of your muscle fibers because they resemble like long parallel threads. So they contain myofilaments. Myofilaments, so like you have myofibrils, and then myofilaments is like the smaller part of a myofibril, right? So myofilaments, they are bundles of 2 protein types, which are thin actin filaments and thick myosin filaments. So the way I think of it is actin filaments and myosin filaments are both myofilaments, right? But actin has the words it's like spelled ACTIN, and thin has IN, and so does actin. So that's how you know it's thin. And the other one will just be thick and myosin filaments. So actin filaments I'll talk about more as we go, but the most important thing you should take away from this slide is that there is an interaction between the actin filaments and the myosin ones, and it kind of slides against each other, like almost like friction. It slides against each other, and it generates a force which leads to muscle contraction. So it's like another aspect within the myofibril. So like we had, let me go back. We had this whole slide, and we had that this was the muscle fiber. But within that muscle fiber, there's like this myofibrils, and in those myofibrils, this little red tiny dots that look like 100 is just thick and thin filaments. Okay, so now let's go on to the next one. So again, the sarcomere, as I said, was like the smallest thing. Like if you were to list, the sarcomere would be the smallest, right? So the sarcomere is like, it's like the headquarters of the superhero's layer because it's within myofibrils with approximately 10K units, right? 10,000 units working together just for muscle contraction. So there's a lot that goes in between, like just moving, like just pouring something or retracting your hand from a certain hot object. So there's a lot of antibodies, there's a lot of blood vessels that go into that. So the sarcomere is like the building block where actin and myosin filaments interact. It represents like a synchronized superhero duo, if you will. It's like the actin and the myosin, they interact and they have the same purpose, but you can't attain that purpose without one of them. So you have to have both. So when a muscle receives a contraction signal, the actin and myosin filaments within each sarcomere that kind of slide past each other. So they shorten the sarcomere and the overall muscle fiber length. And in doing so, this kind of sliding motion, this friction of where they go past each other, is similar to a superhero's team executing synchronized moves or like dancers working together in a choreo. So as sarcomeres contract, the muscle fibers they kind of draw closer together and they generate the force which is needed for movement. So each sarcomere contributes to the overall contraction. And by doing so, by coordinating thousands of sarcomeres at once simultaneously, muscles kind of unleash their like full potential. And so they allow you to like keep moving forward when you feel like you're like when you can't do another rep and like your muscles keep going forward because it's of the sarcomeres. So, okay, let's go on to the next one, which is so identify all parts of sarcomere. This is like the same thing that we just talked about. I included these two slides as like a visual representation. You don't have to know about the MZ line that much. They're not that important. I'll explain about them later, but they're just little tiny markings on each of your filaments. So it keeps going deeper and deeper. But this is just the same thing that we said. Okay, so let's go on to actin filaments. Okay. So actin filaments again are like they're like fragile threads. They extend from the Z lines, so they extend from so in like a myofilament, you have the thin, and so this is kind of like your Z line. So they extend from this is your Z disc, so this is your Z line. So they extend from the Z lines, and they kind of continue going. So they are located in the center, and they form a distinct pattern within the sarcomere, and they interact with the myosin, again, the thick filaments, in like the zone of overlap. So the zone of overlap is, as its name literally suggests, it's just a zone in which actin will overlap with myosin. So like this part over here, where the actin and the myosin are interacting with each other, that's literally just a zone of overlap. And if you notice it going in opposite ways, that's crucial to the foundations of a myofilament. So the interaction is crucial for muscle contraction because it enables the sliding motion that shortens the sarcomere. So every time the thick and thin, they slide against each other, kind of like friction, it shortens the length of the sarcomere, and that's primarily the function that is responsible for muscle contraction. The I band, on the other hand, is like, it's like a light region. Let me see if I can show it. Yeah, so this is like kind of a better image, but the I band is like this whole part, this from the zone of overlap to the next zone of overlap that there would be. And so the I band is a light region between successive A bands. So this I band is between the A bands because the A bands is another fancy way of saying the space where the zone of overlap is. So between this zone of overlap, between where the actin and the myosin interact, is an I band and then another A band. So that's another way of thinking of that. So they appear bright because they have the presence of thin filaments. Thin filaments are always brighter than myosin. And it may not seem that way because they're thin, so how can they provide that much intensity? The light is a whole different concept in compared to myofilaments. So the actin filaments are the thin filaments, and they play a significant role in generating force, and they are out of the actin and the myosin, the actin are the ones that are primarily responsible for the shortening of the sarcomere. So they connect the sarcomere boundaries and create the I bands. So these I bands that you have in the middle, it's because the thin filaments are connecting the Z lines with the A band, and they're forming this whole thing. So it's the thin filaments and part of the myosin filaments that are keeping this whole sarcomere together. All right, so now that we talked about actin, does anyone have any questions, by the way, on actin filaments? I know there was a lot, so if you have any questions, just feel free to ask in the chat, or are we good? You can put it in the chat for, okay. If I'm confusing anyone, let me know. Okay. So I got in a private chat that we're okay. Um, Everyone's good? Then I guess we'll move on to myosin filaments. Okay. Again, at any point, if it's confusing, please just feel free to ask. I know anatomy can be confusing. Um, so next comes like the myosin thick filaments, and they're kind of like sturdy pillars within the sarcomere because they're located in the center and they form the A band. They appear dark on like any graph that you'll see from like a scientist or whatever, and that's because they're dense. So myosin again are really thick, and thick meaning like really dense in this case. They have a lot of density in them, and because they have a lot of density, they're really dark. Um, Okay. So these filaments, they generate force and they kind of drive muscle contraction like the actin does. They have specialized heads. So in a myosin filament, you have like a head and a tail, right? So the heads basically are the primary factor that interacts with the thin filaments. So when they slide against each other, it's the head interacting with the actin. And in doing so, they form like cross bridges. So when they slide past each other, the myosin's head will kind of interact with the thin filament and it'll kind of get attached, kind of like how you put your key into a lock and then you pull it out. It's the same way like that. They'll become attached and then they'll become pulled out. And during the time where they're attached, it's called a cross bridge. So this interaction, it enables like this whole sliding filament theory to occur. So they're kind of like, visual them as like strong columns anchoring, the sarcomere. They're ready to exert force, and their presence in the A band, which again was just like this whole zone of overlap, which is like where the two lines look like they're coming together and they're touching, but they're really not. And their presence in that emphasizes the vital role in the muscle function because they're, it's like how the only thing you really retain from biology is that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So it's like that. So it's like the myosin thick filaments are like the powerhouse of this whole sarcomere, and they work alongside the actin filaments to generate force and enable movement. So they kind of have like a partnership because they both come together, they both form unison, and then they both separate. Okay, so for slide 16 and 17, it's saying the same thing that I just said, but in more detail. So thin filaments, if you think about it in like terms of like a superhero, they're like acrobats. They're flexible and they each are like a skilled team member. But to protect the actin's binding sites, or like how you would when you're going to box and you like you wrap the cloth around your hand so that you are protecting your hand. It's the same way. So to protect the actin binding sites, there's this enzyme called tropomyosin, which acts kind of like an impenetrable armor. So again, going back to Iron Man, like how he has his whole armor, that's what tropomyosin is, kind of, in this sense. And it's secured by this troponin, which is a protein, which is like the vital, it's like the vigilant sentinel. So the myosin superheroes, they enter with their thick filament powerhouses, they're like mitochondria, and they feature a tail, as I said before, and the head. So calcium is like the primary component, and it serves as the key to unlock their potential. So it activates the troponin, which again was just like this thing that attaches on the tropomyosin, which was the suit, like we said, like an Iron Man. And it activates the troponin and it shifts the iron suit or the iron shield, tropomyosin, away from the actin binding site. So basically, what happens is that they attach, but to unattach, there's the tropomyosin, which is the iron shell, and the troponin that work together to kind of replace the actin filament back to its original state and to kind of protect it. It's like in a superhero how they might press a button to close or to shield their dome if there's intruders outside, to kind of not let them protrude in. It's like almost like a membrane. And so when it comes to the attaching, the actin sites become exposed because they have to let the myosin head attach and form that cross bridge that we talked about before. And so when it comes to, when it comes to the exposed actin sites, they trigger like this whole heroic interaction. They trigger the cross bridges. So the myosins, they form these cross bridges and they latch onto the actin and they kind of enable like this team effort for muscle contraction. So every single time you move a muscle, every single time, like it could just be like a simple like moving of your finger or whatever. Every single time you do that, a cross bridge, millions of cross bridges are going out once, and they're going kind of like this, and then they're going out. And in doing so, it's muscle contraction and then relaxed. So the calcium signal, like I said, the energy storage that we talked about before that the sarcoplasmic reticulum releases, it releases it and it unleashes it to the myosin. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum, this all happens in there. And when it releases all of this stored energy, it releases it into the myosin or into the mitochondria. And that's how it becomes actually the mitochondria. So, so separation between the sarcoplasmic reticulum, the myosin, and the actin, it generates force and it propels like this whole sliding motion within the sarcomere. But again, so just overall, the actin filaments that interact with myosin and tropomyosin and troponin to signal calciums to release their energy so that it can fuel muscle contraction. Okay. That's basically it. We covered 2 slideshows in that, so it's not a lot. Really quickly in the chat though, has anyone heard of this before? Like thick and thin filaments. Has anyone ever like heard of like the term myofilament or like heard it once but not known what it meant? If you haven't, then that's okay too. But anyone who has, you can just be like, I have in the chat. The audience view of this really lags compared to the presenter view. Okay. I'll wait for like 2 minutes with that. The good part is that the hard part of this presentation is done. So like, it's like easier, relatively. So yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna wait another minute because I feel like that was a lot to take in. So I'll just wait another minute to give like a break, and then we can go right in again. Because I want to let the information digest and not throw everything out at once at you. I feel like it's like a lot to take in. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's start. So this is again, that's just the same thing that we did. Okay. So we have 5 slides left, so just bear with me here, and then we'll be done. So now we finished all like the intricate parts of like what the muscle is, but it's important to know that like if you see this like in your peers, it's important to know like the 3 different types or the 3 most common types in which your muscles will be working or they'll be responding to bacterial toxins. So I spoke about bacterial toxins the whole presentation. So botulism is like, again, think of it as like a superhero. So it's like, or as an enemy for the superhero, excuse me. It's like a villain that basically contaminates our food with a toxin called botulinum toxin. So when we consume contaminated food, it like results in food poisoning or whatever. But this toxin, this thing that makes food poisoning, it basically in your heart, in your whole body, you have this enzyme called ACH, right? And so what it does is it prevents the release of this enzyme. That's not okay because it then blocks the communication center for our muscle contractions. And so without the release of ACH, it's like the whole muscle contractions are left in the dark as they're unable to receive signals that they need to contract and like move. So it's almost like muscle weakness and paralysis can occur in cases of botulism because the communication centers are blocked, the T-tubules are blocked, everything is blocked, and so your muscles become weak and they become fragile and they become brittle. But they're also, that's more of like an unnatural process. Again, those are just some signs and symptoms. So we don't really have to go over that. I feel like that's a lot. So there is also rigor mortis. You may have heard of this in terms of like you know that your body's skeletal muscles become like there is a time where you'll become like really paralyzed or whatever. That's what rigor mortis kind of is. It's where your body just kind of goes into like extreme shock or whatever. So it undergoes an unnatural process, or excuse me, a natural process known as rigor mortis, which kind of it brings like it makes your muscles more stiff and occurs after death. So it becomes so rigor mortis is something that comes right after death. It's when your muscles, your skeletal muscles kind of become as stiff as like wood, as a board. And it's like a freeze frame moment for like a like in terms of like a superhero. And it's like kind of where the muscles kind of lock into place. Like you won't there's no contraction, there's no cross pitches formed, none of the acting, nothing is moving. It's just everything just stopped. It's kind of like um may come after a heart attack where everything just stops, your organs stop, everything dies. And during this time, muscle contraction cannot occur and muscles remain contracted. But this stiffness may be temporary and it may gradually resolve as the body undergoes decomposition. So as your body decomposes, the stiffness will kind of loosen up, I guess, and it'll resolve. But it usually occurs after death. Okay. And then for lysosomal, we don't have to worry about that. Tetanus. So tetanus is basically it's like a villain again, and it disrupts the whole functioning of the muscles as the other two diseases. So it's caused by bacteria and it releases this toxin which basically affects the whole nervous system. So it traps the heroes or the superheroes kind of in a grip. So it's caused by bacteria like botulism was. And you may hear the common term that people use for it is lockjaw. Like which is similar to like a superhero's jaw locking shut. So the stiffness and the spasms in the jaw and the face muscles make it difficult to open the mouth. So if somebody has like a locked jaw, it makes it difficult for them to speak as they can't open their mouth. So there are two forms of tetanus. Again, that's like the scientific name for it. But if lockjaw is easier, then I'll just use that one. So there's incomplete lockjaw and complete lockjaw. So an incomplete lockjaw, it's as the name suggests, it's incomplete. So the way that your muscle works is sorry, that's my dog. The way that your muscles work is that it's supposed to go like up and down. It has like it's like a graph that it peaks and then it dips and then it peaks and it dips again. So the affected muscle cycles between contraction and relaxation, between like when you contract your muscles or when you relax them, it falls short of reaching its full strength, and that's incomplete muscles. So it's not reaching the strength that it's supposed to, and it's falling short. The toxin also interferes with the ability to unleash the full maximum potential of muscle contractions, against resulting in weak bones. Complete tetanus is overdoing it. So think of like incomplete lockjaw as kind of like you're not meeting the expectations, whereas complete thing is like you're overdoing it, right? It's where like this nerve stimulation and it increases to the point that there is no muscle relaxation phase. So like you're constantly contracting your muscles, you're not relaxing at all, and that's eliminated. And it's like when you go run and you come back, or you do any like you say you do like a heavy leg day Sunday in the gym, right? Like a superhero, or even as like a regular person, right? If you do leg day, say one day, then you take a recovery. Recovery is important when you're working out. So it would be like in complete lockjaw, there's no recovery. You just keep working out, your muscles keep contracting, and that's not good because recovery is important to allow your muscles to recuperate themselves. So this relentless stimulation, it kind of keeps the muscles in constant contraction, and they reach max tension without relaxation. So it's kind of like it would be like you're exceeding expectations, but in this case, it's bad. So finally, there's like the three forces that help your muscle fiber return to its original length. So agonistic and antagonistic. So the thing that allows your muscles to go like this is your agonistic. It allows your muscles to contract sort of in this fashion. But what releases it back to its original length is elastic forces, the movements of opposing muscles, and gravity. So like how you have your triceps and your biceps. So when you contract your muscle and you release it back, your triceps and biceps help bring the muscle back because then it kind of goes like an antagonist. It's kind of like the superhero and the villain kind of cancel each other out because they go back and forth with in terms of a muscle. So again, elastic forces, gravity just kind of pulls it down, and like the movements of opposing muscles help it return to its original one. Okay, so there's a lot on this slide and on this one too, but in reality, fast fibers and slow fibers, it seems like a lot, but there's actually not that much. So we understand that you have to release calcium, you have to release that stored energy by the sarcoplasmic reticulum. But when you shift the focus to fast fibers, they're kind of like, um, again, like a fast fiber is kind of like the speedsters of like our muscular system. So these muscle fibers, they reach peak twitch tension, which is another way of saying like the lockjaw tennis. They reach peak, they reach peak tension in like a fraction of a second. And so it's kind of like a superhero sprinting into action. Like that's fast fibers at work. You starting off with like a great start on your reps. You entering a race with like a great start. It's kind of like that. That's where fast fibers are used. There are types of fibers called fast fibers for that type of powerful contractions. They produce powerful contractions because they have large size. They have densely packed myofibrils, so like a lot of myosine. Again, myosine gives it its density, and they have abundant glycogen reserves, right? Um, so it's not really an important thing, but when you run long distance, when you do cross country, when you do distance track, you run for long distances, and so you're constantly using like the mitochondria. But when you are doing like a sprinter, when you're doing short distances, or when you're doing like a 400-meter dash or like an 800-meter dash, that's when your body will switch to glycolysis to give it like more energy to sustain you throughout that whole run. So the fast fibers, they kind of rely on glycolysis for energy, which makes them prone to rapid fatigue. So it's like the fast fibers are kind of like, as you've seen in this image, fast fibers would kind of be like for like 400-meter dashes. They would be like for 800-meter dashes. Slow twitch muscles are more for like the long distance that you have. So the reason, a way that you can think of it is like fast, like it's fast energy, it runs out quickly. But slow is like you can go slow and steady. So fast is kind of the thing that kicks in when you're sprinting or whatever. Again, slow fibers, so like for marathon runners. So the slow fibers, as its name might suggest, are slow and they're smaller in diameter compared to like fast fibers. But they possess an incredible amount of stamina and determination. So when you're running those long distances, when you're doing a lot of reps, the thing that keeps you going is the slow fibers, because they're kind of like the reason your body has endurance is because of slow fibers. Think of it like that. So just like superheroes who can like kind of endure like these long wars and these long battles, slow fibers are specialized to continue contracting for extended periods without fatigue. They give rise to red muscles. So red muscles are like, they're like the legs of a superhero, because they're like the powerful legs of a superhero because they keep it going for long distances, while fast fibers are kind of like the pale white muscles. So envision slow fibers as like steadfast and resilient heroes, capable of maintaining their strength and power for extended missions, right? So ensuring that our muscles go to any distance and conquer any challenge, while the fast fibers are the ones that are like kind of muscles, are kind of superheroes that have a short energy span. They're kind of like they have a short battery of energy. So muscles that are dominated by fast fibers, they appear pale and are called white muscles. So like chicken breast. Chicken breast is an example of a fast fiber, whereas slow fibers are like red muscles. They're like chicken legs. So like, again, they are also the legs of like humans. And so fast fibers and slow fibers, that's the real difference between them. That's basically all this presentation was. Are there any questions? I know this is a lot, but I tried to explain it to the best of my ability. That's why I used the whole superhero technique thing. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. This is actually like the time that you can ask them, because that's all the presentation is. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys took away something from this. I know this was long. It was confusing. It was overwhelming, but Um, the biggest thing you can take away from this is the sarcomere is like the smallest muscle unit. That's the biggest thing. Um, but yeah, any questions? You guys can put them in the chat. I'll sit around for a good 5 minutes. I said it so bad. 5 minutes, and then until 3:23, and then if there's no more questions, we can close it out. So if anyone has any questions, you guys put them in the chat now. So so there's many different types of fast and slow fibers. So in terms of fast and slow fibers, there are ones that are used for like your biceps and your triceps. There's others that are used for your legs. So in response to your question, short answer, long answer, short. They're different. Each muscle is different. Each muscle has a type of fiber that is articulated and kind of represented in such a way that the fiber is only able to be used in that aspect, in that spectrum. But the function is still the same all throughout the body. So yeah. That's why like chicken breast and chicken legs, like they all have fibers, but it's different. That's why like your legs make you go faster. Okay. That was a good question though. Any other questions? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, you can log off if you don't have any questions. You don't have to sit with me in awkward silence. It's okay. If you don't have any questions, you can like log off. It's totally okay. I'm just staying around for anyone who does. Mhm. Okay. Uh, so I'm assuming. Do you guys? Are you good? You want to log off? Uh, I'm gonna log off now. If there's no more questions, thank you for watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day. All right. Stop sharing.